Okay, Bismillah. So now I want to speak about the other half of this entire vision. In fact, I have the slides from last time. We have introduced letter, this mystical doctrine of letterism. Oh, looks like I'll stay blue. That these letters, and another way to understand letters perhaps is as runes or hieroglyphs. Mystical symbols, but rather these are not the symbols, but rather the things symbolized, the divine idea archetypes. Were also the essences and the mysteries of things. That all things are made out of these spiritual essences and atoms and substances. But now we should also speak of numbers, perhaps numberism. A good name to have here is Pythagoras. So this is actually the ancient teaching of Pythagoras, whom I believe we are most likely all familiar with. However, most likely as a mathematician, but Pythagoras was more than a mathematician. Pythagoras was a mystic, a poet, a philosopher, but really to the Greeks, even a prophet of mysteries, who spoke who spoke the very essences of being and creation. And he comes very early on in the list of Greek philosophers. He precedes Plato and Socrates. I can't remember his relation to Parmenides, but I think he might be before him. I'm not sure. Regardless, this ancient doctrine is that numbers are the grounds of all things, the same as letters. That these numbers, the numbers of Pythagoras, and by these numbers we do not mean numbers as computational devices. Neither do we mean numbers as structures or symbols, but we mean numbers in the same way that we speak of letters as primordial, uncreated, irreducible elements and ideas. When Pythagoras speaks of numbers, it is Plato who speaks of ideas. The words and the names of Plato are the numbers of Pythagoras. So these two dimensions really are the same harmony. These letters and the numbers are the same. We now understand that there is an alphabet and that there is a number system. We speak of our ABCs and our 1, 2, 3s. But what should be known is that this is a modern division. In the ancient world, and of course in the pre-literate world, the oral world, Numbers were one and the same with letters. In the Arabic alphabet, the initial alphabet was the abjad, alif, ba, jim, dal, which actually comes from Greek, alpha, beta, gamma, delta. How would we write 1, 2, 3, 4? Well, exactly as you see before you. In fact, 1 comes from alif. This is why we call them the Arabic numerals. 1 comes from alif. 2 comes from ba. 3 comes from jim. 4 comes from dal. And I suppose if you really squint, somehow you could tell, you could understand the connections between these. Well, really, another way to write this is as thus. What's 4 and 4? It's like this. But the point I mean to make is that they're symbols. We now use two sets of symbols to refer to letters and to numbers, which has made us think that they're two separate things. That the letter dimension and the number dimension, i.e., the realm of language and the realm of mathematics, are two separate, distinct realms. That there are qualities and there are quantities. There are spirits and there are bodies. There are the humanities, which deal with languages and philologies. And there are the sciences, which behold mathematics and are beholden to it. But this entire dichotomy is presupposed upon this bifurcation, rather this tearing asunder, this splitting. To tear away number from letter is like tearing away a baby from his mother. They are one and the same thing. Yes, perhaps they are two sides of the same whole, truly like life and like death. There is only one being, but we experience it in life and death. But there's only an infinitely thin line between life and death, which very frequently is crossed. So letters and numbers speak of the same being. But why then do we speak of these as two separate things? Yes, they are ultimately one, but clearly we have mathematics, and clearly we have language, and clearly we have meanings and qualities. And clearly we have structures and quantities. Though there is oneness, yet there is duality. Duality which does not contradict oneness, but like the many names of God, an infinity which arises out of the sheer oneness of that unity. For anything as we spoke, or even as we may go back to our Arabic lessons, if you have seen those. If not, a very brief recap is that an Arabic word, or really we might say any word in general, any word, ultimately has a root. That root then takes a form, right? We can compose and build words. In Arabic, we literally speak of the binya, the build, the structure of a word. Or these two beautiful words, meaning and structure. Ma'na and mabna. You have the root, the ultimate idea where the word is taking its meaning from. In Arabic, these are letters. For example, there's a root which is just the letters, the asl, ayn, lam, and mim. These three letters. You have the word, let's say, alim. That word has taken this root of these three letters and cast them into the framework, the mold of this pattern, fa'il. Now, this is the time that color coordination would have been helpful had I used it. Well, it's too late now. I'll have to continue. So you have this root, the ma'na, which is taking this form of fa'il, which therefore produces the word alim. As it is in grammar, this is not just Arabic grammar, but really any language works like this. So it goes back to our ultimate vision that all things are words, but now all words come forth from the roots which are letters. The letters become words by structures. So anything in existence is composed of its roots, which ultimately dives and delves, and burrows through all of reality into the very root of the root of the root of being itself, which is the divine essence, the oneness of God. Because there is the tree of being, and all being sprouts forth and effloresces from the ground of oneness as the one branch and the one root, the one seed, branches and becomes diversified and multiplied in its many diverse and sundry forms throughout existence. So all things have one root, which are these letters. The first considerations of unity. And these roots therefore become into branches and leaves, which are the words, the things of existence. And the one root branches into the many things according to these numbers, according to these structures. That is the mathematics of heaven, as one English mystic, Thomas Browne, named it. The mathematics of heaven because it is the architecture and artifice and handiwork of the divine maker who is in heaven. Because it is heavenly. All structure and order begins in heaven before it has come down to earth. Heaven, not merely that which is above us, but that which is before us and before us. Heaven, which is the spiritual and the abstract, which is before the immanent and the physical. All, think about it this way, all patterns we see before us, all physical things, originate in mathematical structure. And so by letters flowing through the loci of numbers, by God breathing the oneness of the breath into the many forms, therefore the entire world is formed. Now perhaps to both consolidate and also wrap this short presentation up, I might move to a presentation I gave at some point. Let's have a look at this. To read a few verses from the Qur'an which pertain to number. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق يفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون. He is the one which made the sun as an illumination and the moon lights, and therefore apportioned it to be stages and mansions, even that ye may know the number of time and the accounting of things. So these words for mathematics, for numbers, adad, arithmetic, hisab, and counting, here these are embedded in the sanctum of the divine word, that the entire cosmic infrastructure has been built. And the word build literally occurs quite a few times in both the Qur'an and the Bible. That God built the heavens as an architect builds up mansions. That, right, there is a clause here of reason. The building of the heavens accords to mathematics, both that they are built according to divine mathematics, but also that we may learn this divine heavenly mathematics, which ultimately is learnt heavenwards, comes down from the pristine motion of the heavens, which are sublime and immaculate and precisely mathematical. Because when we look up at the stars and the galactic bodies, we see patterns, we see mathematical orders, going back to the ancients who began in astrology, looking up at the stars and seeing the patterns of the constellations, which ultimately are mathematical shapes. This desire to see symmetry is perhaps the strongest human desire, and I do not say that lightly. I really mean that. I say that even more than our desire for food and shelter and intimacy, because the desire for symmetry perhaps includes all these things. Why seek we food? Ultimately, I would say for nourishment. But why do we wish to nourish ourselves? I think it is because we know what the symmetry, the wholeness, and the perfect constitution of the self is. And we therefore know to satiate that, therefore to fulfill it and maintain it. Just as we detest hunger, we also detest being sick and overeating. We innately know the symmetry and pattern of balance. And holding on to the idea of balance which shall come. But another important word here is the Arabic word yufassilu. Fassala, so fassal, is literally a division, some gap between two things. So fassala would mean to divide something in stages repeatedly. The signs of God, which are all things, not just the words of God, but all things are the words of God. Both the written and the cosmic signs, all these things have been divided. And division is a mathematical process, is it not? All things have been divided according to this balance, this cosmic balance and harmony. And also, بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأحاط بما لديهم وأحصى كل شيء عددا. And he encompasseth their presence and hath known the number of all things. That all things are known, أحصى كل شيء, in عددا, the numbers. Now the meaning of number here would be the meaning of letter as we spoke it. The numbers of things are their essences. Again, not their structures in the sense of their mathematical descriptions, but the number of a thing is a mystical mark within the essence of the thing, which is the thing. Put it another way, we now understand the human body or any biological body to be the result of a genetic code. of its DNA sequence. And so the DNA sequence is as the seed and the root of that thing. What is twofold interesting to me is that the DNA sequence is not something physical. Allegedly, it is not physical. Yes, it has a physical structure, the molecule of DNA, but the molecule of DNA is only encoding a mathematical sequence. As if each thing literally has a number. I have a number. The DNA sequence can be written out as a number. That number is me. It's my code. And you have your code. And each thing has some number, which is its essence. Or again, mathematically taking any entity, surely it has a molecular constitution, does it not? It has a momentum, a velocity. It has a density in space-time. It has all these things. All these things may be given as numbers, and therefore we may conceive there to be some matrix of its number, which is therefore the essence of the thing. This is the mathematics of heaven found within the Qur'an. And lastly, just finishing this, وَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ إِذَا كِلْتُمْ وَزِنُوا بِالْقِسْطَاسِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. And give full due measure when ye measure, and balance or weigh all things بالقسطاس المستقيم, with the true scales, the straight scales, the absolute scales, the scales of truth. So this is not only ontological, that is to say, it is not only that God has made a cosmic balance, but it is what we may say ethical and teleological, i.e., there's a moral dimension to this. We want to morally be in alignment with the cosmic order, because human morality comes from the cosmic balance. Human morality is in the form of cosmic ordinality. And this is something we have lost now in the modern age. All the ancients knew this, that the law of earth is in the image of the law and mandate of heaven, and that any society, any polity, if it be made true, must therefore truly be made in the image of what is above, cannot be man-made, cannot be humanly, because all that is humanly perishes, but what is divine is forever, and so must be divine, and must be heavenly, that it may last as long as the heavens last, perpetually and forever, and without decay. As long as we measure with truth, as long as we are mathematical, and we concord mathematically, and we follow that spiritual impulse I said of symmetry, so shall we live in good symmetry and wholeness and happiness and healthy form. But as long and as far as we stray from this innate balance, which is not man-made, does not need to be man-made, does not need to be spoken by men, but has been spoken by heaven itself, as long as we concord to that form, so the world shall be formed around us by the generations of human behavior. That is the mathematics of heaven. A mathematics not as something abstract. We're not speaking here about merely thinking. We mean both a thinking and a doing. And lastly, وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانَ. And God established the balance. And al-mizan is a tremendous word. Balance, harmony, structure, the mathematical order, all these things, the cosmic balance he established. Wada, he put it down as the ground, the basis upon which all things are made, upon which they stand. That the beings, the cosmic entities, know their place in the cosmic order and do not transgress their place. That we may all foremost establish ourselves and pick ourselves up and make ourselves in this image, and therefore one another, and therefore the world itself. That morality, the purpose of human life, is to conform, to bring ourselves into accord with harmony and unity. It is to live according to, and therefore in, that innate balance. And lastly, perhaps to give just a few pretty images, this is a known wisdom. I speak forth here nothing new. All people know this and have known this. The greatest works of art and architecture are the manifestations of symmetry. For man has seen within himself, by the eyrie of his own essence, by that inmost inward spiritual eye, he has seen both the eye of God and seen within that eye the true divine eye. He has seen infinite oneness and perfect symmetry and order, because symmetry is oneness. Symmetry is oneness when it predominates a multiplicity. Works like this, any work of beauty and symmetry, is merely the spiritual expression of man. And anyone who aligns himself to his spiritual nature shall therefore produce beauty and be beautiful. That is both human and divine. Because all human shapes, as I said, are in the images of the shapes of nature and the natural forms. All things are images. All things are symbols. Because there is nothing but oneness. The oneness of being, which is the oneness of God. And having known this oneness, therefore shall we become one and only within ourselves. And this mathematics of heaven is not somewhere far-fetched. It is in all things, because heaven is in all things. As Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you, because it is within every you. It is in the flower as it is within man. It is in the dust and the ground. It is in every atom. Because mathematics and heavenly order is inside of everything. Otherwise, it would not be. So this is our task and our work. To learn letter, that we may live according to the letter. And to learn number, that we may know the numbers of things. Therefore, that we may live according to the balance and harmony of all things. That we may live according to the mathematics of heaven and become heavenly, and therefore make the kingdom of heaven on earth.